All right, we are live. Hey, everybody. I'm Jeremy Pope with Sales Call Overhaul podcast and Facebook Live. This is my co-founder.
I'm Jason Canigan.
It's true. And this is our guest, Luis Congdon, who is podcaster's secret weapon Facebook group, and some really cool stuff going on there. Luis, before we get into it, would you tell people the main URL you'd like them to go to if they want to find out more about you?
Yeah, definitely. We have all of that at thrivinglaunch.com.
Thrivinglaunch.com. Okay. I think people ought to be able to spell that just fine. Good deal. So we're going to talk about podcasting today and how podcasts can affect high-ticket sales and all this kind of stuff, because Luis has some mid-ticket and high-ticket packages himself, and he teaches people how to use Facebook groups and the podcasts to grow their audience and everything. It's some cool stuff. If you want us to overhaul your sales calls, submit your sales calls through our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/salescalloverhaul. Just message the page. And we're doing our $1,100 giveaway through that page. So if you want to receive our $1,100 package, then submit your sales calls through that, and we'll go through it with our guest for that week. And we will rebuild that sales call from the ground up into something that converts 10 to 15% higher on your next 3 phone calls. So
that's right. Last week's was so well received by the guy we did it for. He went out and he immediately started doing better.
Oh, that's true.
It was great feedback.
Yep. So fun stuff. Let's see. That's how to do it. Our next week's guest is former CIA agent and Shark Tank deal maker Jason Hansen. And we want to know who you want to hear as a guest. So please let us know. We're very interested in who should be a guest on our show. And Luis will ask you that as well after we get done here. So Jason, would you kick us off?
All right. Thanks for being here, Luis. Appreciate it. I'm going to jump right into it. It is not enough to just know the subject to become a successful podcaster. What are the best and most effective ways to determine your topics that you're going to talk about on your podcast so that your listeners and group not only get value, but will actually listen to it? How do you stack the odds in your favor of getting your content consumed?
Well, there's a lot of different methods and strategies that somebody can utilize for that. And some of that really depends on what kind of show you're creating and the kind of audience that you're creating it for. But, you know, for our show, we run a business-based kind of entrepreneurial self-help type of show. So what we try to do is we're not trying to grow a big show. We're not trying to grow a big audience. We are trying to grow a strong base of fans. And that's okay if it's niche, and it's okay if that niche audience grows and gets bigger. So what I teach people with all of that in mind, because most people won't have big shows, most people won't have big audiences with their shows, what I try to teach people is create the kinds of content that will help your audience so that they can take that content and that education and have some kind of success, or take that content and that education and become more curious about you and your services so that they can turn into clients.
I've got like 3 questions from that. Sorry.
Sure.
So when you're talking about a strong fan base versus a big fan base, what are the indicators of a strong fan base to you?
In the context of podcasting, a strong fan base is mostly indicated by, are they going over to your website and turning into leads? So are they opting into whatever you're giving away? Are they sharing the show with their audience and maybe tagging your fan page in it? Are they going over to your fan page? Are they emailing you and telling you about how an episode impacted or changed their life in some kind of way?
Oh, wow.
Because you want that, right? And also, if your listenership is not consistent, then you can also tell that you're not having the kind of strong fan base that you want. So if, one day you got 3,000 listens and then all of a sudden you're back to 20 listens every day and you're used to having 10 listeners every day, then you're building up a little bit of a fan base. Your numbers may have doubled. So don't be too sad. And if you get this huge spike and then it drops, but if that drop still somehow helps you to kind of go up, then that's good. And so, if you're used to having 100 listeners and it stays at 100, then that means those 100 people, if it kind of goes like this, but stays within that 100 mark, slightly above it or below it, but just there, then you know that there's a group of people that consistently tune in.
Okay. So is there kind of a minimum number? You mentioned different types of shows. You said a business focused show and a personal development focused show. I guess those are kind of the same thing a lot of the times. Business is always personal, right?
That's right.
With what kind of shows would you say there are, like the different categories of shows that are relevant to the people that come to you?
So what kinds of shows are, well, there's a variety of types of shows, right? There's self-help shows, business shows, comedy shows. There's storytelling type shows, spirituality based shows, and education based shows. And obviously, those shows will intersect. And then there's also religious shows. And that happens to be one of the two biggest categories in iTunes for shows are comedies and religious.
Interesting. Okay. So do a lot of people come to you for all those different categories, or do people tend to be more business focused in what they need from you?
Most people who come to me are in business and they want to utilize a podcast to help their business. And so there's always going to be a business slant to it. So
that's most of our audience too.
Yeah, most of the people that I work with are going to be people who are coaches, freelancers, consultants, business owners, entrepreneurs, digital marketers, digital nomads, lawyers, doctors, chiropractors. People with businesses are the people that we tend to help.
Okay.
And comedians are generally, there are many entrepreneurial comedians, obviously, but they're generally not the ones who are coming to us for help.
Okay. That makes sense. So these are people who are using their podcast as, I hesitate to use the word supplement or adjunct because they sound like such small words when a podcast.
I like to use it as, I like to say it's an arm of your business.
Yeah, I like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
And most people who come to me are either interested in using a podcast as a way to get a message out to the world, to share some sort of impactful message. And then they discover that a podcast can also be an arm of a business. And so they'll launch a business in conjunction with their podcast. So some people just get interested in podcasting because it just seems cool, right? That's how I got into it. I like the idea of having a podcast. It seemed really cool. I've met some incredible people because of it. But that was, for me, the initial buy-in was, hey, I could get on phone calls with Jack Canfield, Marion Williamson, Brian Tracy, all these people that I've had a chance to interview. And you can get on calls with them and meet them and even cut business deals with them if you utilize the tactics that I teach. And so what got me in was then eventually kind of like the hook that, took the fish out of the water and brought me to all these new lands and territories, which is having a business. Yeah.
That's cool. Okay.
That really goes into our next question here. Behind the podcast is a business for us anyway, right? And for obviously many of your clients. People, we do as business owners want people to buy something eventually, right? I mean, noise is great, but if it's all noise and no revenue, what's the point in doing all this, right? Although what you were saying just now about connecting with other business leaders and doing deals with them, but then there still has to be a buying market down the chain. So
well,
how
what's
do you
nice
set
though
that process up? You mentioned, go ahead.
What I was going to say is what's really nice is that if you don't have a built-in audience already, or you're fairly new to a market, you get on a phone call with somebody like, let's say, Jack Canfield, for example. And, in my case, he asked me to write a chapter for his book after our interview. What happens is that these guys already have audiences and they're going to share their audiences with you. And so that's part of it. And Jason, you were asking, how do you kind of set up the sales element to your podcast, or how do you build that in?
Yeah. I mean, the podcasts need to translate into group activity and then purchasing decisions. And I know earlier you quickly went over, get them off there and onto your website and onto a list and that. Tell us, I guess, more about that or other strategies.
Yeah, podcasting is no different than television or radio. When you're up late at night, this is a really good example, is you're up late really you're up really late at night and you see these commercials for all sorts of products, and they're constantly blasting that phone number, because they know that an idle TV viewer is not a customer. Until I pick up the phone or visit a website, me viewing a commercial is just a touch point. And touch points are great. A podcast, essentially what you're doing with a podcast is you're creating relativity, because now you are relative to that person's life. You are also creating connection because now you've connected. And what's cool is the average podcast listeners tuning in for 20 to 25 minutes every single day. So that's a lot of connection.
That's a lot better than a YouTube video.
Yeah, exactly. And also we know that 20% of podcast listeners, this is from Edison Research, is a very big research company, and they research all sorts of stuff. And what they found is 20% of podcast listeners make $100,000 more every single year. And then there's about 10% of podcast listeners who make $75,000 a year or more. And we know statistically most of those listeners are educated. That $75,000 a year for most people, that leaves you some expendable income. And so what you want to do with those listeners as you're building that connection, and there's a certain buy-in, they're buying into 20 minutes of their life with you. And what you want to do is now drive them over to your website, drive them over to your store if you have a physical store. But you need something that's obviously gravitating for them, something that's salacious and juicy, right? Makes them thirsty. So you want to do that. And so if your show is a marketing-based show, most of your listeners are going to be interested in marketing. So offer them, I have a free membership site. It's got 15 hours of marketing education. You can head over here and you can grab that, and it's only available to the people that hear this. And in fact, normally it's on sale. If you go to the page, you're going to have to buy it. But if you put in this code, you'll get it. And so now you've really kind of hit people with this sense of exclusivity, and you've also hit people with this special opportunity, right? Because if you're giving away like a 5-page report, it sounds cool. People can be kind of excited about that. But people have become smarter where that doesn't sound as cool. So you can kind of build on that and make it, do something else with that, or just reward your listeners for listening. So, hey, listen to the show, text this number and I'm going to send you a free gift. Like do something that makes it very easy, but you have to turn a passive listener into a customer, and you have to do that somehow. I mean, how many TV commercials do we see, and how many items or products are we likely to buy? Not very many. But what we do know is that if I keep getting hit with those commercials, eventually I'll either give up and buy something, or I'll be at the store and I'm thinking about toothpaste and I'm like, oh yeah, Colgate. And I don't even know why I'm thinking that, but they've hit me with a commercial that Colgate is so damn good. So I suggest you do the same thing with your podcast. Is don't forget that your job is to educate and entertain, but it's also to drive those people back to your website or to your store so that they'll make a purchase.
Right. So the people with the business-focused podcasts, especially in the high-ticket world, which is that's one way to call the world that we're in, I guess, the high-ticket coaching world. But in that area, when we're driving people to that website, how many listeners do you really need before you would consider the podcast to have a good ROI at this point? Like to be able to have a good ROI if you've got your call to actions and great content and you're doing the way things that Luis says to do it.
Yeah, well, in my personal experience, when I was doing a show with 10 to 50 downloads a day, which is what most people will do when they first come out the gate with their show, and they don't really have a lot of strategies to grow a show and they're new. That's what my show was doing, and it did that, and I was making anywhere from $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a month from the show. And so what I really recommend to people is play around with ways to offer your audience, no matter the size, to offer them something that will help them become clients, that will inspire them to go from passive listener, driving in their car, tuning into your podcast, sitting on the bus with their headphones on, because most people are tuning into podcasts. At least this is kind of what we know from the data, is they're listening in the morning and they're listening in the evening and a little bit during the afternoon. And so what that data can tell, or what we can extract from that data, is that most people are tuning into the podcast while they're headed to work or when they're getting off work. right?
Okay.
And so it's a kind of an active activity for somebody to be listening with headphones and the phone in their pocket to be listening to your show, or driving. And it is not going to be easy for them to grab their phone and all of a sudden, go to your website.
Yeah.
But you want to keep reminding them of that and what you offer them, so that at some point they go, I'm getting really sick of going into work, and I know that like I have some skills, and maybe I could just sell these skills. And then they're listening to they're like listening to what's bouncing around in their head. And then what comes up is, oh yeah, thrivinglaunch.com. They have like a thing. I'll go and check it out. And that's happened to me very many times. I mean, not that long ago, I had a guy message me on LinkedIn and said, hey, I'm a big fan of your show. I've been listening. I've never met the guy. I don't know anything. We're not even connected, but he sent me a message. And we got on a phone call, and he paid $3,500 after 30 minutes of talking on the phone. And he knew a lot about me. He was like, I just feel like I know you guys. I mean, your wife, Kamala, what an amazing woman. And you guys have done these travels. And I'm like, wow, you know as much about my life as like some of my really good friends, because he's been tuning in on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So that trust has been cultivated. And for most people, the idea of making $3,500 after talking to somebody for 30 minutes that you absolutely have never met, never seen, never personally had any engagement with is incredible. And a podcast allows you to basically speed up that time of knowing each other so that the sale can happen faster. And that's what in high ticket sales worlds, you really have to cultivate trust, right? I mean, $3,000, $10,000, $15,000 is a lot.
Yeah, the biggest problem we see in a lot of these funnels all of our people go, oh yeah, I need a funnel. But the indoctrination phase is what we kind of call it. And that is the biggest thing that we see fall every time, is people not getting through that phase well, and not getting what they need from that, so they can, you hear the really old school folks like the Tom Hopkins and everything, call it know, like, and trust. That kind of stuff. But I love that celebrity effect. The podcast seems like it can take the place of a big part of an expensive indoctrination funnel.
Yeah, I mean, Russell Brunson has 3 different podcasts.
Whoa.
Right? Yeah, I think he has 3. Grant Cardone has 2 podcasts. His wife has a podcast. Tony Robbins has a podcast. Neil Patel has one. Some movie stars are coming out with shows. Mark Maron really kind of re-catapulted his career was down in the dumps, and he wasn't able to get any kind of contracts or anything. And he started his podcast. Now, he had a TV show. Now he's touring. He's, interviewed Obama. He's considered kind of like one of the most famous podcasters, really. Joe Rogan has a podcast, who happens to be a comedian and announcer for the UFC. Tim Ferriss has a podcast. And if you, do some research, you'll find out that Tim Ferriss has really dropped off the blogging world and the book writing world. And he's very focused in podcasting because there's just the potential is insane. And Tim Ferriss, being the intelligent guy that he is, he's using a podcast not only to make deals, all sorts of deals, and syndicate a message across the world and get sponsors that are paying him between $10,000 to $30,000 for a 30-second to like 50-second commercial spot. But what he's also doing is he's interviewing people that have deep pockets who can afford the kinds of services that he offers. And that's what I really recommend, is that a lot of people are looking at podcasts and funnels and social media. And the problem with a lot of this technology is that people forget that we're still humans and we need that human connection. And funnels are hard. Like, if that's not your skill set, my skill set is talking to people. I'm very good at it. I can talk to people all day long, and I can make money just talking. So for me, a podcast allows me to do that. I get on a phone call with UFC Hall of Famer and heavyweight champion of the world, Bas Rutten, who's been in a couple movies. And at that end of that interview, we cut some business together. So that's really what I recommend people, is like, think of a podcast as an arm of the business that allows you to spread out farther and create more trust. And then also think about the podcast is a machine that just generates connections unparalleled to anything else and allows you access to all sorts of people. I mean, right now I'm thinking about trying to interview, and I have some friends that have done this, Jay Abraham. huge name in the marketing world. In the marketing world and just in the world of money, the guy's worth $30 billion. He's richer than our president in the United States, like multi-billionaire. And I could literally hit send from my computer, from my $2,000 laptop, hit send, and be talking to a guy who's worth $30 billion. So that's what I really look at is, doesn't matter how small your business is, doesn't matter how unknown you are, because I started this while sleeping on my friend's couch, homeless, with a boot on my car, so I couldn't drive.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't afford to take it off. So what I really look at this is your network. It does create some net worth if you know how to tap into it, and a podcasting allows you to do that.
You mentioned if you know how to tap into it. There's some etiquette around this stuff that I am learning. This is a little embarrassing personally, because you talk about asking guests to promote for you and the proper way to do that.
Big time.
And I know I have gone overboard on that kind of thing before. And so it's just a new world, learning new etiquette, figuring out how to do this kind of stuff. And I think part of the reason that it took a little bit, like I'm watching your posts and I'm seeing the kind of thing you're talking about. And I'm like, oh, I've done that. Oh, no, I've done that. I'm that guy, right? And who wants to be that guy? But with that kind of thing, I think part of the reason for that was I was a little too I was a little too audience focused rather than being connection focused, like you mentioned there. Mm-hmm. And I love connections, but goodness, it's easy to get off track with that. So thank you for that reminder that it's just as much about the connections that you make and the people that you meet and the new friends that you make in that process as it is the audience that you're podcasting for right there. So thank you.
Yeah, totally. And that's really humble of you to make that, to admit that. And the thing is, that I'll tell you is, Ryan Holiday is somebody who I've really wanted to interview.
He would be great. Yeah.
Right? And now I've traditionally had close to a near 100% rate of getting people on my show. Mm-hmm. I've had very good luck, even when people respond and say no, thank you. I've had very good luck converting people. With the proliferation of podcasting and the proliferation and just this kind of just explosion of the amount of people that are doing it, more and more people are saying no, thank you, and holding strong to that. And so I've had to become more creative, where before somebody would say no, and I would just hear no, not right now. And so I would just ask them, hey, can I email you in a couple months? And now I'm starting to hear people say, no, it's just, I've done too many shows, or I'm not really interested in podcasts right now. So I've had to become more creative in how I reach out, where I grab emails, information from, how I get introductions made, like this whole new kind of thing that I've had to figure out. And one of the things that people really look at, and this is something that I highly recommend, is get your guests to promote your show for you, but you have to do it so tactfully. And there's a lot of tact and skill, and kind of agility that goes with that. So I'll give you an example. Dr. John and Julie Gottman are marriage education. They're marriage researchers. They come from the world of academia, but in that world, they're like superstars. They're the most respected people in that world of marriage education research. And we had them on our show. They shared our show. Our show traditionally was getting around 200 to 500 to maybe 1,000 downloads every single day, as a weekly show. Which is still pretty good. Like for me, that was fantastic. I was very happy about that.
Awesome.
But you want to keep growing. So I got them to share the show. Not only that, we met them in person and filmed the interview. Very hard people to get a hold of. They shared the show. And in one day we had 13,000 downloads, or something like 13,500 something downloads in one day. Now, to go from every single day, you're averaging anywhere from kind of that 500 to 1,000, and that's it. So that's
20x
your
increase, right?
Yeah, that's your core audience. And all of a sudden, 13,000. I know that extra 12,000 downloads and more came from them, because every single month, I still get an average of 5 to 10 extra thousand downloads from them, because I can see this episode did this many downloads.
Yeah.
So being very tactful. Jack Canfield is another person who came on our show, and I asked him, hey, would you share the show? And he said, and I have a screenshot of this email, sure, this was a really unique episode, so I'm happy to share it. Jack Canfield, I've seen his, I've watched him, and I've seen where he's like going, you know, because I talk to the podcasters and I'm watching TV and I listen to radio, so you can watch somebody's life and see what they're up to. And Jack Canfield is like constantly doing interviews. So the fact that he chose to share mine means that he said no to a lot of other people because he has to. I mean, if he's on Oprah 1 month and he's on CNN and ABC, why is he going to share my tiny show? Like, it helps him to promote Oprah, and it helps him to repeat that. And so we have to be very tactful in how we ask. Otherwise, we wear thin the connections, and then we don't get those shares, which are really helpful and important. And I'm happy to go into how you can do that if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
Is that something that you want me to talk about, Jason?
Yeah, that might be more useful than my next questions.
Okay. What was your question? Let's see if maybe they kind of tie in together.
Not really. I was going to ask, like, we've seen some kind of possible fatigue about theme day posts like Goal Setting Tuesday and Freebie Friday and that, as they're across many groups, right? And then people get tired of, I have to participate in this and that. What is your stance on using these? Yes, no, or if something else, what do you recommend to promote interaction?
As far as promoting, I'll come back to the other thing, because promoting interaction, and that's and what I hear Jason really asking is, how do I create and promote more engagement inside of my Facebook group? The Facebook communities have been a huge part of my strategy when I had no website, no money, no income, and really not a lot of skill sense. I use social media. It's free and lots of people are there. So why not? It's like going into a networking every day that is bustling like crazy with potential clients. And if you create a Facebook group, then it's bustling with potential clients that are actually interested in that thing. Whereas, you know, if I went out to this downtown New York and started yelling that I have a product, a bunch of people would be like, I don't care. You know, it's not relevant to me. But maybe if you stood there all day, 1 or 2 people would come by. But if you could create a room and funnel people into that room, then they're all interested in that product. And that's what a Facebook group is a community. It's a congregation. And so what we want to do and we can do these theme days. I think theme days are okay. And traditionally they used to work really well. What I think works even better now is asking the kinds of questions that help other people feel really smart. And so, like, for example, I went into feel really smart, insightful, helpful, or make them think in some new way. So I went inside of a group with about 40,000 people. And so it's a very, you know, there's a lot of people. That means that you can post something and it's drowned out right away. And I went in there and it's a group for copywriters. And for you guys listening, copywriters are the people that write words that make you want to buy stuff. And I went inside this group and I said, why are copywriters such jerks? Like, what happens with copywriters that they become these kind of like edgy, mean people?
A lot of them like to build that reputation.
And I said, you know, I just don't understand why they need to do that. You know, like, you can be good at your craft without being crude and rude and short. And man, for like 2 days, that was the #1 post in that group. You know, people had a lot of things to say. Another Facebook group I went into, it's a podcasting group, and I posted a check that I got from my podcast for like $1,200, a little over $1,200. A guest came on my show and I made $1,200 from their appearance. And I posted a check and I said, I don't know who believes podcasters need to be broke, because I don't, right? And that's all I said in the picture. And people started commenting, hey, how did you make that money? What did you do? And I think I might have said, I have a very tiny show, by the way. And people started commenting, and some people were like, oh, dude, you're just full of it. That's egotistical. And this conversation started going, you know? And the idea behind that post, in all honesty, is that my reason for posting that was to be a little bit kind of like in your face with them, because a lot of these podcasters, they believe that they need to be broke or that they can't make money. And so I'm posting this picture and being like, look, you can make money. And so it kind of upset them. And so what I really recommend with Facebook groups is say things that will upset people, ask questions that will make people feel like they're going to be really smart by giving you the answer. Or tell stories that are kind of provocative. So one thing I did on my own.
Oh, you're great at that.
Yeah, that's probably my gift.
And you've got a huge life story that's provocative in itself anyway, but you're great at pulling out the threads of that. And okay.
And one little method for that I can give you guys is, if you have a conversation with somebody, start your post with a quote from the person in a conversation and then go into a story. I had a guy who's a lawyer write me, and he said, "Hey, Luis, I'm interested in learning what you do. How much would it cost for me to pay for your time?" And I said, "I charge $250 an hour, you know, and that's a discount for you. Normally it's got to be more, $400 or $500 an hour." And he responded with, I don't know what your guys' thing is with swearing here.
It's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Cause he responded with, "Dude, get fucked. Are you serious? Like, get the fuck out of here."
Right.
And I responded back, "No, that's the truth." And he said, "Well, you must just think people are easy to prey on online." And so I wrote a whole post about that online, and I started with "get fucked." And then I was talking to a lawyer who got really upset about my fees. And for people, you read that and you're like, whoa, like, you know, and I don't normally swear very often online. So when I do swear, it is provocative for who I am. So I highly recommend, you know, and find your comfort level, because I'm not saying go out and be a jerk. Like, I'm not going to go and post something and say Christians are idiots. Like, that's not something.
You're not a copywriter after all.
Yeah. Right. And I've had comments like that made with people too, where people have said, "Well, you're not a copywriter. What are you doing in this group?" And I'm like, I'm not a copywriter, but I can write words to make you. But I just, those are strategies. And people shy away.
Those are awesome. That's going to help my content efforts. Thank you.
You know, and really dig into that stuff. And sometimes the thing is, you know, like, I've done this for my wife, and I've written posts for her, and she told me that she really doesn't feel very comfortable with some of the stuff I write for her because it gets people upset. Like, I wrote a post for her recently saying, "I want to empower women to have more voices, and I'm tired of men feeling like they can shut us down. And this is a new era where women will speak up. And I'm podcasting and helping more women podcast, so more women will have voices. And if you don't like it or you have something against it, that's your own problem. And I believe that this is a time for us to free our vocal cords. Women, are you in?" And a couple of men commented, and they're like, "Damn feminists," you know. And I was like, yes, that's what I want. And she goes, "Oh, but I don't like it." And I'm like, "But you're a woman, and you're challenging these men to get uncomfortable, and they're commenting." So what I really want to tell you is that if you follow my methods, you will get more engagement. You will get more people liking and commenting. And if there was a hate button, you will get that too. But that's okay. Look, if you want to be Gandhi, you're going to have people hate you. If you want to be Martin Luther King, these people were assassinated. Right. So having somebody not like your, you know, if you want to be insanely rich, there's going to be people. I mean, I had a friend who's worth like $250 million, a crazy net worth. And he was driving around in this phantom Rolls Royce, which is, I think, like a $4 million car. Okay. And a guy pulled up next to him and signaled this guy. He's a hypnotherapist, Marshall Silver. And so the guy signaled. So he signaled to Marshall Silver, this guy that pulled up in another car, for Marshall to roll down his window. So Marshall rolled down the window. And the guy says, "Hey, do you have any idea how many people could have been fed with the money that you spent on that car?" And he said it kind of like, you know, indignant, like, who the fuck pays $4 million for a car? And Marshall responds, "I do know how many people were fed. Lots of people. The car maker, everyone who paid for the car, everyone who brought the car to me, everyone who, you know, manufactured all the parts, their families." And he was like, "Lots of people. Thanks for asking me that question." Rolled up the window and drove off. Yeah. Clearly somebody was offended because somebody owns a really nice car. And whether they're justified or not, it's up to them how they want to feel about it. And it's up to you. If you want more engagement, if you want to be richer in life in any kind of area, be ready to upset people. Yeah. That's sorry, I went on a little rant there, but this kind of stuff excites me.
Dude, I didn't want to stop. Yeah. That's perfect.
I know you've got another appointment coming up.
I do.
And I want to be conscious of that time. So maybe we should cover real quick the strategies we're going to talk about before.
How much more time do we have, Luis? We'll cut it to that.
We got like 8 more minutes. So
okay.
Right.
Good deal.
So covering the strategy around how to properly promote your show, as well as properly engage not just your audience, but properly engage your guest so that they'll want to promote. One of the first strategies starts before you even do the show. That's really the key, right? So all of my guests, they get a really nice email with a compliment and an invitation to come on the show. What the point of that is so that they'll say yes, but the other deeper purpose of that is they feel a sense of admiration. And it does not matter if you're Oprah Winfrey, President of the United States, or just regular Joe sitting down, wearing nice clothes. If somebody gives you a compliment, you appreciate that. And that sense of appreciation allows you to feel more open to the other person. I had a guest on my show who's been on Oprah 19 times, more than anybody else.
Wow.
And he was the first guest that came on my show. When I interviewed him, I told him that I really admired him and felt incredibly honored that he would give me some of his time, especially given all of his success and the way that his work has impacted me really tremendously, changed the way that I do relationships. And he said, despite being a New York Times bestselling author or being on Oprah so many times, whenever I hear a compliment like that, it makes me feel really good. And whenever I come on shows, I always feel nervous. And it's a reminder that whoever you're dealing with is still human. They're as human as you are, right? They wake up, they have to take that, breath of air. They have to get water. They have to eat. They've got just the same human thing that makes us live running through their veins just like you do. So remember that, regardless how famous somebody is. So leading with that, you try to make them feel really good. And then the next piece is when you do get them on the show, remind them, hey, this is a recorded episode. Like, all we're doing right now is we're just setting a foundation. So it sounds like I'm being long-winded, but it's very much like, making love with your partner. Foreplay starts days before the thing happens. And it's the same thing with your guests. So make them feel really good. And whatever that looks like for you, create that for yourself. And the way it looks like for me is I start with a compliment, invite them on the show, send them an email invite, and send them a reminder about the episode before they come on the show. Just, hey, this is the time. Let me know if you need anything. This is my personal phone number. If you have any kind of snafus, so that they feel really taken care of. Once they come on the call, I say, hi, how's your day going? I'm really excited to have you here. If it's somebody that I really admire, I give them a compliment. So, let's say it was you guys. I would just say, hey, Jason, I want to let you know that I really appreciate the way that you guys are running your business, and Jeremy, the way that you guys are doing sales overhaul. I listened to some of your episodes and really impacted the way that I'm doing sales. So I would give that compliment, and then, hey, listen, I just want to let you know before we started that this is a pre-recorded episode, so I can go back, edit anything. So if you make any kind of slips or anything, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Is there anything that you need from me before we start? And now I've just established that in my words, I've established that I love you, that I care about you. And then we go and do the interview. And I try to ask really unique questions, not the same questions that everybody else is asking. Because one of the things I know about people that are on the road promoting a lot is that if their interview with you sounds like every other one, they're not going to want to promote it, which is okay. Like they want you to promote them. And that's still a huge honor. But if you can ask some kind of unique questions, and you guys have done that well because you're good listeners.
That's all Jason. Jason is the one who decides on the questions beforehand. Yep. He's fantastic. Yep.
Well, you guys have done a good job asking unique questions throughout the interview, following up and just, with the reminder of the date and time for the interview. And then the next thing that I do is after the interview, done recording, and I thank the person. I maybe tell them one nugget that I got out of the interview. And then from there, I ask them something like, hey, listen, you've been really gracious with your time. Is there anything that I can do for you to make your life better? There's something going on in your life that maybe I could support you with. Generally, most people are going to say no. Sometimes
With a
somebody will
general
ask,
request like that. Yeah.
yeah, sometimes they'll, they might give you something. And then I'll tell them, hey, listen, I'm going to edit and master this whole thing so you sound great. Is there a particular date or something going on in your life, in your business life, that if I released it around that time would help you promote a product or help you, right?
Yeah, I like that.
Now, that question is kind of like a two-pronged fork. So one, I'm giving a compliment, or one, I'm lending myself to be at their disposal and helpful, right? But two, I'm positioning myself so that if they do say yes, that they're more likely now to promote my episode in conjunction with something that they're releasing. So what they might say is, hey, listen, Jason and Jeremy, something I've got going on is I'm releasing a podcast thing next month on the 20th. Would you be willing to release it then? Now, when I release it around that time and give it to you, that around that time, what will happen is I might go, I'm going to email this to my list and say, hey, I've got a new product coming out, in a way to kind of lead my listener, my audience, is to give them this valuable interview. So that's one thing that I'll do. And then the next thing that I'll do is the follow-up. A lot of people, what they do is they just have an interview and that's it. I don't have just an interview. I actually, one of the processes that I ask my guests is, can you give me your address, an address that I can send a gift to?
I was just about to ask you about that. Okay.
I actually have a form that they fill out so that they can fill out this whole form, and it's all automated. This whole process that I'm giving you guys, honestly, it's all automated now. Yeah. It's all copy and paste and automated. So it took me a long time to devise it, but now
it has to be for consistency.
Yeah. But now, I can run a 5-day-a-week show, which I did. And it's a high volume of people to do and have it all automated. And then the thing is I get their address and sometimes maybe once a year or so, I will send them a thank you card with a little $5 gift card and say, hey, Jason, Jeremy, really appreciate having you on the show. I wanted to take you out to coffee and ask you these questions, and I just want to thank you. So here's my taking you out to coffee.
I love it.
On me. And it's $5, and I don't do this with every single guest. I selectively choose because if I went to 500 guests and sent them $5 each, that's a lot. Right. But I do things like that. And then I also send them an email following up maybe 2 weeks after the interview, just saying, hey, thanks again for coming on the show. Please know if there's anything that I can support you with, we're here. And then also, here is the date that your episode will be going live, and I'll be sending you a bunch of goodies on that day so you can share it.
Nice. I like that.
Okay. Yeah. And so now what you've done is you've hit them with so many positive touch points. Yeah. And then the day that the episode goes live, I tag them on social media, every channel possible, man. I go on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, wherever, and I tag them. And then I send them an email also just saying, hey, your episode is live. Here's some information that you can use to share. If you want to, I'd be honored if you did. No pressure. Really make sure that you don't pressure people. But if you do that kind of stuff, from now on. Yeah. But I will tell you, I've had Jack Canfield share the show. I've had multiple time New York Times bestseller Bruce Lipton share our show.
And it's obvious why.
Osprey share the show. I mean, these are some huge names. Right. Ben Settle, David Deutsch. Pretty much all the copywriters. I'm part of somebody's evergreen funnel now. Andre Chaperone. He's in the world of copywriting. He's kind of a small guy.
Email marketing, but he's
but he's huge. He's huge in the sense that anybody who's in copywriting knows who he is. In the larger world of people, he's very small and he likes it that way. He's a quiet guy, but he's made a great living doing what he's done. And I'm part of his evergreen funnel now because of the treatment. If I went on my screen, I'm not saying any of this stuff to brag. I'm saying that these work. If I went onto my screen and shared my screen, I can show you I own something around 20 plus digital courses, and 95% of those have all been gifted to me from my guests that come on my show. My guests tend to share with me access to different things of theirs because of the treatment that I give. So it's worth it to put this upfront kind of thought and time to create this. And you can download inside of Gmail. If you use Gmail, there's some software called Streak. and there's other software that you can use, and you can set up templates, and then you can click, have this template uploaded, and then later, and it goes out, and then it's just boom. You don't even have to, when I send you that book here email, then I set up another one to thank you after the interview. Like I set it all. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Well, I'm going to go back and listen to this 4 or 5 times. My goodness.
Yeah. I hope that's helpful.
There's no way to describe how helpful that is. I didn't even know what questions to ask there. Thank you.
Yeah, I know we've been giving books away randomly for a long time.
That's good.
Yeah. But this is
it's not formalized in the way that you've laid it out.
And I probably wouldn't give books to my guests. Yeah. It's a so-so gift. The only reason why I wouldn't do it, if you want to do it, that's fine. I think it could be good strategically for business purposes. But the only reason I wouldn't do it is because I won't read a book if someone sends me a book. As a host of a show, I get lots of books. And whenever authors, like somebody like Jack Canfield, I can't imagine how many books come across the desk. So I would try to find another way to stand out, even if it's a book with a $5 gift card, with a bigger envelope than normal, and say, open to the first page. I've got a gift just for you. It's not part of the book. And that way they'll at least crack the book open.
Nice.
Right.
Add something unique to that gift.
I
hope that was helpful. I have to run now, guys.
So helpful. Thank you so much. ThrivingLaunch.com, Luis Congdon. And thank you for being here, Luis.
Okay, adios. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right. Thank you. And that's it. Wow. What a value-packed show. Jason, can you believe it? My goodness.
That's incredible.
Well, will you wrap us up, Jason?
All right.
I mean, this is a little bit of an unusual show, right?
Right. Podcaster's Secret Weapon is Luis's Facebook group. The site to go to is thrivinglaunch.com.
Yeah.
Remember, if you want our $1,100 sales call overhaul package, and listen to last week's episode if you want to hear what that sounds like.
Yeah.
With Jim Padilla. Get on over to facebook.com/sales call overhaul and message our page to be able to submit your call recording. Our guest next week, this is pretty cool, former CIA agent Jason Hansen. He got on Shark Tank, and I've seen this episode and made a deal with Damon John for Spy, Escape, and Evasion. The course I bought. And I bought long ago. It was an affiliate purchase before. I think he may have gone on Shark Tank, or it was just before. So it's pretty neat since I knew about this guy anyway. And I'm looking forward to having him on. But again, thank you to our guest today.
Thank you
Luis
so
Congdon,
much, Luis.
Because that was original. I don't think we could have had that interview with anybody else.
I don't think so. Luis messaged me something that I'm going to say. He's got a free training on the stuff that he's just been shared. It's called paid2podcast.com. And that's the number 2, paid2podcast.com. And that is a free training he says, on what I shared. He was in a hurry. So obviously, I don't know everything that's in that course, but I am in Luis's group. That's why we had him on in the first place. He's dynamite. He always provides amazing value. And you can hear the level of care that he has for his peeps. It really does rise to the level of love, the way that he says. So check that out as well. ThrivingLaunch.com, paid2podcast.com, and the Podcaster's Secret Weapon group. So
awesome.
Yeah. All right.
That's it for us.
Wow.
Jason Canigan and Jeremy Pope at Sales Call Overhaul. We'll see you next week.